GRAAMA's Voices is sponsored by a grant through the Michigan Council for Humanities, through the Kellogg Foundation, the Dara Eyes Foundation, and Grand Valley State University, as well as Bayard Art Consulting. Hi, I'm George Bayard, Executive Director of the African American Museum and Archives, or GRAAMA, and this project is called GRAAMA's Voices. GRAAMA's Voices is an oral history project that documents African Americans who moved here from the turn of the century to Grand Rapids in the western Michigan area. We're talking to African Americans from all walks of life, from every corner of the county, from as far as Benton Harbor all the way up to Idlewild. These conversations tell us about things that happened here in West Michigan that's not normally recorded in everyday history. We now present GRAAMA's Voices.
My grandfather's wife, who was a grandmother to us growing up, her name was Hattie. Hattie was a great grandmother, a real wonderful grandmother to us children.
Now, where was that?
That was in Mount Bayou, Mississippi. Mount Bayou is all black town, it still is, in Mississippi. Matter of fact, I'm going there this weekend. And but I was born in Tunica, Mississippi. And we moved down to Mount Bayou in the 50s. I think I was like 2 years old when we moved to Mount Bayou. That's where I attended school. At that time, the school was called IT Montgomery, and our classroom had more than one grade in it. So if we went to school, that might have been first grade, second grade, and third grade in the same class.
The same classroom?
Same classroom.
Was that a segregated school also?
That was very segregated in the 50s. The town I come from was all black town, and we had our own hospital, our own bank, we had all our own stuff. But like every other place, it's such a small place until when my grandfather got sick. I think they took him to Shelby, I want to believe, and that's where the hospital said black, white. I moved to Grand Rapids in 1965 with my mother and my 4 other my siblings. I came from a family of 14 kids. I'm child number 11. And the reason we moved to Grand Rapids was because we was too young to pick enough cotton and work in the field to provide for the family. At that time, tobacco.
Still sharecropping, right?
That was sharecropping, but we didn't do sharecropping. We was hired out hands, field hands. I remember they started teaching you how to work in the field. A lot of a motto in Mississippi was, if you're old enough to sit in a class all day, then you're old enough to start to go to the field. So at 6 years old, we was in the field with a little, they used to call them Kroger sacks, with a string tied on it, and we worked along with our parents or an older sibling to learn how to pick the cotton. So I did do that. By the time I was 11, 12, I was pulling a 12-foot cotton sack on my back. We made $3 a day. We had to be in the field at 6, and you did not get off until 6. That was $12 a day, and that was picking cotton. If you was blessed and lucky, for chopping cotton, you got like $250 to $350 a day.
Now, what's the difference between picking cotton and chopping cotton?
Chopping cotton is when you go out and take the weeds out with a hoe. You're getting the weeds out just like working your garden. So you had to make sure there wasn't all the weeds in that cotton. You had to make sure when the cotton grew up, it was weed free. So when you did go in there and pick it, you just got cotton. So we did a lot of that. At that time, all of my siblings was at home, but then the older kids got married and left home and left the 5 youngest kids, which is 1 brother older than me and 3 children under me. And we ranged from the age of about 5 maybe to 12. So at that point, we could not go out and pick or chop enough cotton to sustain the family. So my aunt, who already lived in Michigan, came down and visit my mom, and she told my mom, you know, you need to move to Michigan with those kids so they can go to school and you can get help with them. And that's how we end up in Michigan.
We're going to finish up, and I wanted to get with the last statement that I talked with you before, and that was, I asked you how old you were, and you told me why your age is hard to figure out. You know, how old are you, and why is it that your age is a little bit different?
Well, my age, as I consider my driver's license age and my birth certificate age, is I'm 89 years old now. But I'm really 90 years old now, today.
Okay.
The reason is when I had to register to drive back in the 40s, in World War II, I had to register. You had to have a birth certificate. The principal in the school told us you have to register to vote. So you have to, if you're 18 or older, if you become 18 years of age. And we call it, there's a law called a universal military training. You had to go, Army, you had to register. So I had to get a birth certificate to prove my age. Well, the birth certificate was held in Jackson, Mississippi, the state headquarters, state capital. So it was burned down. The records of the birth certificate was burned down. Some fire happened years back, and they had no record of it. So you had to get a birth certificate by getting your doctor or 3 witnesses and your parents. 3 witnesses and your parents to sign a statement stating the day you were born. And then you could get a birth certificate. So I got my mom, she got 2 other witnesses to sign it. That I was born in 1926, August 25th, 1926, which was not correct. And I asked her why. She said, I don't want to lose you. He said, because I got nobody with me, and my other brother and sister was married and gone. So I don't want to lose you. If I lose you, I got nobody with me. My dad was dead. So I want to try to keep you out of it if you can. So I took it on, and I took it to the Forest County Courthouse in Hattiesburg where I was going to school. So I went in to get a birth certificate. and talked to the clerk and and he said, well, okay, what was your mom name? I had an application you had to fill out.
Right.
And I told him what my mom's name was, Christine Hartfield. He said, well, what's your dad's name? Christine, I said, Henry Booker Hartfield. Well, what is your mom on the application? He said, what was your mom's maiden name? I said, Christine Hartfield. I took it back. I took it and gave it to him. He said, this can't be right. He's a white guy. He said, it can't be right. Your mom can't be Hartfield and married Hartfield. I said, yes, that's my dad. His name was Hartfield. My mom's name was, he said, no, it's not right. Boy, you have to go get it right, get it straight. So I got a new application. He gave me a brand new one. He took that one and threw it away. And I just went outside the building and I redid it. And I put on there my maiden name. My mom's maiden name was Christine Hinton. 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 And I said, I had to make it up because it wasn't a name. And I went back. About 10 minutes later, I went back. Okay, no problem. Birth certificate, right. Got it. Well, they sent it through, you give me approval, and I got my birth certificate in the mail, right? Well, that was wrong. But her name was not a Hinton, her name was Hartfield. But that shows you that how Jim Crow is in Mississippi, in the South. If I didn't lie on the application about my mother's maiden name, I was gonna get a birth certificate. They tell you what to do and how to do it. You didn't have no voice. What you say can't be right. Well, I had to lie to do it. But my actual birth certificate, I was born in 1925. So that's how my actual birthday don't jive with any of my legal paper, my discharge, my Army discharge, my driver's license.
It all has
None of that. It is not correct. It's a year off. It's a year later than when I was born. I was born in 1925.
Okay. Man.
And as growing up as a child, that really amazed me, because when I look around and see this, they did other things to make up for the lack of what they had, such as canning, making quilts, and I would like to go in a lot. This is the root that my mother came from, and I would like to talk about my mother a little bit. My mother was a lady. Until that union, her my father's union, her name was Johnny Miller. And then the reason I'm telling you her name, because she's in history. My mother did quilting. And when us girls come from school, we always had a corner. After we got the chores done, we had a corner we had to quilt out before we reside for the evening. And we had a corner of that quilt we had to sew out. But as time went on, that becomes something that the ladies in the community did. In the evening, my mother would go to this house, that house. It was a quilting thing. It also was a teaching young girls also how to quilt. And the way I moved to Grand Rapids was, I came here visiting a cousin on vacation. And while I was here, my husband's mother, who lived in Colorado, took sick. He flew out there, and while he was on his way there, he got killed. So I had 2 sons, and I was pregnant. Now you got to do. So I gets on the phone, and I call my dad after everything was over and settled down. I said, what am I going to do? He used the word, he said, daughter, you're going to work. I already had a job at Upjohn Pharmacy. I raised those 3 boys. I was there 36 years and retired. And back to the history of my mother, because it's such big history now, she did a quilt. Kalamazoo Museum saw that quilt. They wanted that quilt. They wanted that quilt.
The art museum.
It is in there, being there the rest of our life, generation. So she let them have the quilt, and the quilt was made out of strings. Some of them no bigger than your shoestring. And they were so amazed that she could do that. They wanted to know how she did it.
Yeah, we see quilts made out of strips of cloth.
No, not strips, strings. Strings. And so we wanted to know how she did it. The girls did. She said, by her being the only girl, when the ladies would go from house to house quilting, she said, I had a little red chair. I'd sit on the floor and gather the straps that they cut for the quilt and put in that shoebox. Then she learned how to put the strings together with needle and thread. And it will reside in the museum for generation to come. Some of the girls have been down to Kalamazoo and saw it. It will be there. So if you get an opportunity, go down and see it.
When I was a child, I always wanted to work. So I had me a paper route, and it was the Grand Rapids Press and the Grand Rapids Herald. And we used to sell the Grand Rapids Herald because it came out early in the morning, and then in the evening the Grand Rapids Press would come out, so we could do double duties. But we could only sell on one side of Division Street because the other side was prohibited for us to cross over. And then later on,
you say prohibited, what do you mean?
they wouldn't allow you to, if you were black, you couldn't cross Division Street.
Wow.
And later on, and they let you go up to Madison Street if you had a reason for going up there, like being a butler or a maid in the houses there, because most of the houses on Prospect and Lafayette was your affluent white folks that had big houses up there. That's one reason why you see today they had those houses up there, because they would house their help and everything else, and the children in the house, and they built them real big, you know. And I can remember that I wanted to sell papers on Jefferson Street so bad, and they had the Schnitzelbank there. It was a German restaurant, and they would not allow us to go inside there, so I had to be creative. So I made friends with the Schnitzelbank Carl and his sister, and I would bring my papers there, and they would take them inside to sell them for me, and then bring the money out and give it to me. And this is one reason why I made it. Jefferson was my main road because Bilton's was on the corner, and the Fruit Basket was right across the street, along with Goodyear Tire and Rubber. So we used to sit there and sell our newspapers. And right around the corner was Steve Lincoln and Mercury place, and down on the corner was the Copy place on the corner of Division and Franklin. And then they had Haddams was on the corner of on Division and Wealthy, and we wasn't allowed to go in there, but Maury, who was a real nice guy across the street, he had a carpet place, so he used to take my papers inside and sell them for me and bring the money out and give it to me. But it was very, very difficult, but I always figured there's a will, there's a way, and you just have to say, if God give you a lemon, don't throw it away, just make some lemonade. And if you have to sell that, you sell that. It wasn't easy, but I didn't understand because I remember the time I went into the barber shop on Jefferson Street to sell my papers, and the guy told me I couldn't come in. So I asked him why not, and I went in anyway, and he threw me on the floor and took my bag from me and cut patches in my hair, and I told him I was going to go home and tell my daddy. And so I went home and I spoke to my daddy about it. He asked me one question. He said, "Who barber shop is that?" I said it was his. He said, "Did he tell you not to come in there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I bet you won't go in there no more, won't you?" "Will you?" I said, "I guess I won't." And he didn't get mad at it. So I learned one of these things, that if something don't belong to you, you have to just leave it alone. And that's the reason why I think we was able to make it in Grand Rapids, because we was a family that wasn't rowdy or didn't try to do things that once you know was no, you just went around it. And that's what I mean by, if God gave you a lemon, you make lemonade. You just don't try to do something that you can't, because the schools are segregated. Because South High School, when we went to school, we was taught kitchen and wood shop, because they didn't think that we was able to take English and math and all that kind of stuff. And so we used to be,
That's when blacks and whites went
when
to
the
South?
blacks was, and they had a class, they had a teacher called, his name was Veenkamp, and I can vaguely remember Veenkamp, and his song was all the day. We laugh and play in the fields all day. We are the Veenkamp boys. And Eli Lumpkins, Roy Thrower, and all of us went there, and we didn't get the proper training. Because even with me, myself, I learned how to read just by pronunciation of the words, or hearing a word or something like that. It was never taught to me. I got to tell my wife all the time to break down syllables and know how to pronounce the words and everything like that. So reading was not a choice of mine, because it was just hard to read. It was hard to decipher. But as I got older, I started learning, and I wanted to read then. But most of it, I just figured that when you read a lot of stuff, it's just not the truth. And I always say it was his story, history. And he told the way he wanted to. Just like today, they still lie. They tell you that there's different races, the black race, the Mexican race, and it's only one race, the human race, and the blood of Jesus Christ. And as I got older, I started reading more about it, and I started promoting it. But it's very hard to get a change with people if you don't have enough money to make the change.